Oi, oi, it's your boy, the Ian Machado Gary of I'm Not Attacking Your Family, Jack Slack, and it's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you on Monday the 15th of May, and there were some fights over the weekend that weren't that great, but we're going to talk about them anyway. The real main event of my weekend was playing Zelda, because it's great. If you haven't got it, go get it. They've done, an incredible thing. They've made a game that's probably Game of the Year already, on a device that I heard someone say is less powerful than most modern smartphones. It's truly incredible. I hadn't touched my Switch in months, and now it's just glued to my side. But I normally do gaming shit on the Patreon podcast. Today we're talking about a UFC card and a Bellator card, and maybe there's not much to say about it, but Rolly Romero, weirdest fighter in boxing. He fought a 60-year-old dude, Barroso, and Tony Weeks, who has been a fairly good referee in my recollection in the past. I think it was him that let Miguel Cotto work against Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather famously only let Kenny Bayless ref his fights, because Kenny Bayless sees a clinch. Like if you throw your arms loosely around someone, Kenny Bayless goes, "Whoa, stop, break," back to the middle of the ring. And he thinks the clinch is like the end of the action, but also won't punish you if you clinch all the time. So Floyd used to love that. Anytime he got in a bad spot, arms around the opponent, don't even have to tie him up, just arms around him. Whereas Tony Weeks, he was either the first Maidana fight or the Miguel Cotto fight, because there were two refs who did those two fights, who let Mayweather's opponents work when he loosely threw his arms around them, and they really hammered him for it. Because actually having to tie someone up so that they can't throw punches is a lot harder than throwing your arms loosely around someone and being like, "They can't throw punches, ref. Break this fight up," while they're still punching or trying. So yeah, that was a shame. But Tony Weeks, it was so funny. Rolly gets dropped in the third round, and by this guy's a southpaw, and he throws a nice double jab into a double jab into a left straight, and then in the ninth round, Rolly throws punches and pushes him over, and then he does the same, and that counts as a knockdown. And then he's got the guy in the corner, and he's getting punched in the head and throwing like big swings and missing. And Tony Weeks goes, "No, that guy's dying," and stops the fight. It's either one of the worst stoppages I've ever seen, or blatant corruption. But that's the thing about working for an athletic commission in any capacity. You can just like throw fights, rig fights, whatever. Not rig fights, but you can do your part incorrectly on purpose, and it will always be written off as a mistake. And what will happen is that the commissioner will say, "We'll retrain them." And what you have to do is you watch like a couple of VHS tapes about how to judge a fight or how to ref a fight, and then you're straight back into main events. Remember when Russell Mora, he's done proper fights since. I've seen him in other fights not doing anything wrong. But in Agbeko versus, who was it? One of the Agbeko fights, he just lets this guy punch Agbeko in the dick about 30 times, and it's so blatant that the entire crowd are booing this man, and the commentators are going, "How is he not seeing this?" And then one is so blatant that the other guy Agbeko drops to his knees off this shot to the cup, and Russell Mora can't really do anything else, so he starts counting as if he's been dropped off a body shot. But Keith Kaiser, who was the commissioner at the time in Vegas, came out and was like, "We're really disappointed in this. Russell Mora knows better, so we're going to retrain him." And then, within 3 weeks, Russell Mora is back to doing main events. And Russell Mora, or someone he knew, could have made a fortune off that fight. I don't think there was even an investigation, so you don't even have to be particularly rigorous about not tying it to yourself. Or the Birds, Adelaide Bird and her husband, they're both involved in both boxing and MMA and delivering terrible scorecards. And people will be like, "How does that work?" And you go, "Well, if you can find somewhere that will take the bet on the split decision," and you know that someone's deliberately doing the wrong decision in this fight. And I suppose if you've got faith in the other two judges and you are the judge delivering the wrong decision on purpose, you could always be like, "Well, it's a victimless crime." As long as the guy still wins, the right guy still wins, I could do my job ineffectively and corruptly, and we'll still be fine. But Rolly Romero is fucking hilarious. He's exactly what Muhammad Ali used to accuse George Foreman of being. There's a great bit in The Fight, the Norman Mailer book, about the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire, and Ali he has Bundini read out, or no, it might be one of the journalists, he has him read out the list of people that Foreman's knocked out, and he's just going, bum, bum, didn't knock him out, pushed him over, bum, declaring that none of these knockouts are legit. But Foreman did push a lot of people. What he'd do is he'd hit you and he'd keep pushing you off them, so you'd end up stumbling over. But Rolly, yeah, he hit him with a good shot and then he just pushed him over. Rolly, I've said he's the weirdest fighter in boxing, but he really is. It's kind of like Mayorga back in the day. Just you don't normally see people get to that level exclusively throwing straight-armed haymakers. And he didn't do terribly against Gervonta Davis, despite that. It was one of those ones where everyone was like, well, when he meets Gervonta Davis, he'll be torn apart within seconds. And it took him like, what was this, 6 rounds? But yeah, Romero didn't just instantly die like everyone expected him to. Anywho, there was a Bellator event and a UFC event, which I suppose we have to cover. The UFC event, headlined by Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Fuck my ass, I hate when they do that. And he was fighting Jailton Almeida. Honestly, I massively overthought this one. I'll admit it. We just keep... Basically, as these light heavyweights keep coming up to heavyweight, and I keep going, well, when they get in with a 270-pound man... and then it doesn't matter because they're just so bad. Jairzinho is... I was going, well, all Jailton Almeida does with his takedowns is dive for the legs. He's got that Jacare thing where he's looking at the ground, he's diving for the legs. Gilbert Burns does it too. And that just won't... I don't know if that'll hold up over the rounds, blah, blah, blah. After he stopped one, but what happened was Jairzinho Rozenstruik stopped the first takedown. Jailton Almeida got up, having failed the front kick to double leg. He did a left hook and then the diving double leg again and bundled Rozenstruik straight over. I mean, he got both his legs. This is something that Dom Cruz pointed out on the broadcast. He got both his legs, which is the important thing, of a double leg takedown. But when I say got both his legs, I mean he really wrapped him up. Finishing doubles on your knees, as Jailton Almeida often does, and as you probably won't see that much if you watch some NCAA wrestling or international class wrestling. Pretty popular in jiu-jitsu. It's like you dive in on the double leg, you wrap up the legs and you bundle them over, or you do a trip. You can do an outside trip, you can do an inside trip. Those sort of really committed double leg finishes. Whereas good wrestlers in the wrestling sense tend to pound the knee into the mat, get in position to double leg, and get up to the feet again, whether they're cutting the corner or whether they're just trying to run through. If you watch Jordan Burroughs, who's obviously an extreme example because he's one of the greatest double-leggers of all time, probably greatest double-legger of all time, because that's just his shot. Doesn't do an awful lot else most of the time. If he doesn't have cause to, he's just the double leg and a lot of really nice feints before he goes for it. But I heard someone say that he's the fastest man in the world on his knees because he hits the deck, gets the legs, hits his forehead in the middle of the chest or the solar plexus or wherever, and he takes about 3 steps on his knees to run up to his feet and just go through the guy. But with Almeida, like we said before, it's sort of go down on the double leg and then just sort of slump further down. So if he fails on the shot, he's probably going to end up on the bottom, underneath the guy in a front headlock, or the guy will end up limp legging out and he'll be on his knees, which happened a lot with Jacare back in the day, who I keep likening to Jailton Almeida because they have the same first letter of their name. But yeah, Jailton took him down, got on top, did his usual thing, real safe on top. Real methodical guard passer, get the half guard, get the shoulder pressure, pass to mount, look for the finish. The downside of that is that he does almost no damage. So people calling him heavyweight Habib and things like that, it's almost a completely opposite game. He's all about control. Takes no risks. If you watch Habib versus, Edson Barboza, Michael Johnson, I was about to say Michael Chandler, who obviously Habib never fought because he is the nightmare matchup. But if you watch Habib versus Michael Johnson or someone like that, he'll be in a good position and he'll throw some hard punches and lose a bit of position and then go back to taking the position. It's kind of like Fedor used to be back in the day. He'd get side control, he'd go up to knee on belly to throw in 2 big punches and let the guy get back to guard because he knew he'd just throw it by again and try again. Jailton Almeida fights like he doesn't want to let an inch go. And it means that he doesn't strike. Even when he gets to mount, he mounted Shamil Abdurabumkov, And he was like, what do I do with my hands? He was just looking at him down there and going, oh, what do I do? He's getting outstruck by the guy on the bottom. And even Rosenstruck tried that. You know someone is a bum-ass heavyweight when they're trying to hammer fist off the bottom of Mount. But luckily, Jailton Almeida spent 3 minutes passing the half guard, got to Mount, and immediately Jairzinho Rosenstruck went, oh my God, and turned face down. Didn't just like turn to his back and try to quad pod up, you know, as you would expect. He turned over and just went, oh no, flat on his face. Immediate choke. End of the fight. I mean, I was hyping Jailton Almeida from the moment I saw him on the Contender Series. I like him because he's a light heavyweight who can fucking grapple, and that's exciting. But there's a lot of things there that there's a lot of things that don't seem to be there. Alternate takedowns. Any sort of takedowns from the clinch if he fails on his diving double legs. Any striking at all, really. I don't even know. Like, he's one of those really respected grapplers, so there's this thing like don't engage him in the grappling ever. But I don't even know if he's that good off the bottom. Could be the case that you take him down and he starts trying to throw up triangles against 250-pound heavyweights while they sit on top of him, acquiring points. So he's still a big unknown, and it's kind of like John Jones at heavyweight. Still a big unknown because the first guy he fought was so highly ranked and did nothing to test him. But it's so funny because this time last year or the year before, we were coming up on Rosenstruck Garn, and I was going, well, you know, I do find Rosenstruck's style boring, but there's things about it that's quite interesting in this matchup in particular. And Garner's very good himself, and it's a real high-level technical striking matchup, and you know, both these guys have just been run over by light heavyweights who can do a takedown. But that's watching fights. You're going to be wrong a lot. And speaking of wrong, let's talk about the best fight of the weekend, in my humble opinion. The fight between Mansour Banu and Brent Primus. Mansour Banu is my boy and always has been because he does the giggler sweep. He does two things that I think are really cool. And this is the reason that I'm always bringing him up under all circumstances. He uses the giggler sweep from half guard, and when someone pushes him towards the fence on the ground, when he's on the bottom, he puts his feet in the fence or puts his hands on the fence and turns himself away so that he can continue using his guard to either sweep them or wrestle up or get on their back. I think I've always been fairly upfront with the fact that I think there's a lot wrong, not wrong, but like there's a lot lacking in the rest of his game. But he's very tall, he hits decently hard, and in addition to being tall, he really loves stepping knees and jumping knees. Some of these guys he fights, he can jump a couple of inches off the floor and knee him in the chin. You watch when he murdered Khabib's cousin. He spends, I think it's 2 or 3 rounds on the bottom sweeping him, just constantly keeps sweeping him, and then he gets up to his feet and just nonchalantly hopping knees this guy in the chin, and he goes down like he's been shot and just bounces off the canvas. And there's other cool stuff with that half-guard game. The giggler sweep on its own would be pretty ineffective. The giggler sweep, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm always posting GIFs of him doing it on my Twitter. I did one just today that was, hey, he did the move, which was him sweeping Primus with it. But from the bottom of half-guard, so when you've got one of the opponent's legs, you use the leg that is trapping their leg as a lever. So sometimes they're called knee levers. Lower leg is on top of their lower leg, so your foot goes to the floor, your knee comes up into their hips, and it's a real timing thing because you don't have a lot of strength in this direction, but it knocks their hips over their knee, so their center of balance goes outside of their base. And if you're holding their hand, good chance they fall over, and that happens a lot if guys are trying to drive forward and grab your head or drive forward and hit you. If they're trying to put their weight forward and you catch their arm, you can send them straight over. But if they're wise to it, a lot of the time what will happen is you'll try it, they'll free their arm and post it out to stop themselves falling. And in the course of posting it out, they give you all that space to come up on the underhook and do the traditional wrestle-ups that everyone in MMA should be good at if they get the underhook from half guard, bottom. And one of the other cool things that he was doing against Khabib's cousin, who is a good fighter in his own right, actually, I should learn his name. It was in the Road FC tournament, I believe. But when guys try and keep flat down on his chest to stop him from sending them over, he'll try and ninja choke them on the inside, which is a real weird move that you probably won't see him do successfully ever, but he does a lot of the weird things like that. So he was on the bottom of half guard against Primus in this fight, and he's trying to key lock him from the bottom. And that's not going to work. And then eventually, in the course of Brent Primus freeing his own hand, he gets giggler swept. But this fight, I was impressed by Primus on the ground. He'd been working with Lucas Barboza, and it really showed. But Banu won the striking, and Primus won the ground fighting. Banu came out, pushed him to the fence, and started, jabbing his face off. He's got real tall man defense. That's another problem he's got. Basically, Primus was swinging back from the hips, throwing looping punches against straight punches, which do get boxers plums, and getting lanced up with the jab. But what would happen was, like, Banu would miss, and then a big swing would whiff just past his nose, and the thing that stopped it from connecting was that he was further away because he's tall. He was further away to jab correctly. It wasn't him perfectly maintaining the distance. It was that he was standing as close as he needed to hit the guy, and then a punch whiffed past his nose that he didn't even see. So when you see that, that's always a big marker of tall man defense. It's one of those ones where you're not getting hit as badly as you could, but you don't see that. You're not seeing the punches coming. So when you do get hit, it's probably going to hurt you. This is always something to look for in fighters, if they're registering the punches that are missing or not. Because Gerald Mirsha, against Bruno Silva, I was watching him lean back and everything Silva threw was missing, maybe by a couple of inches, maybe by a mile. But Gerald Mirsha never seemed like he saw the things going past him. He was just punch, 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 lean back. Now, it's a difference because I'm not saying react to punches. Having good defensive movements after your strikes and combinations is good anyway. Like, you want to do it, you don't want to be punch, 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 react to the opponent. You want to be punch, 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 do some kind of movement to get yourself safely out of there. And then whatever they throw hopefully misses. But you want to see it when it misses. Shavkat was a great example of this. His fight with Jeff Neal. He's getting hit with these huge punches that he hadn't been hit by other people because he's tall. He's fighting exactly like a dude who gets away with a lot in the gym because of his physical advantages. Just throwing punches and then trying to lean back with his hands by his hips. So Banu got clipped a couple of times near the end of the round, but most of that first round was him. Second round, Primus took him down. It was all Primus except for the sweep by Banu. Third round was Banu striking. And if it was a 3-round fight, Banu wins. But it's a 5-round fight. And Primus won the fourth. They were tied going into the fifth. Primus won the fifth. It was a really good fight, actually. I'll say just great all round. But, Banu is weird, but even still makes mistakes even in his strongest field. So he's a brilliant back taker, brilliant bottom half guard player. But he got on top of Brent Primus in half guard, and Brent Primus put in the butterfly hook. There's two kinds of half guard. Well, there's three types of half guard. One of them, you don't have anything checking the distance between you and the opponent, and that's called getting smashed. But the two kinds of half guard are your free leg is either in keeping distance with your knee, so your knee's in front of their chest or their hips, and that's called a knee shield, or your foot's inside their thigh. So your knee's not obstructing them, maybe. It can be sometimes, but your knee is not obstructing them, but you have a butterfly hook. And the half butterfly really has been popularized by Gordon Ryan. That's his guard. He's the best in the world at it. But in MMA, it's been catching on because it's a great way to kick out to butterfly guard and then get up. The thing with the half butterfly guard versus the knee shield half guard is that if you're in the knee shield half guard or just a regular half guard and you grab the guy's head in a guillotine, you can threaten him effectively. He'll have to work to free his head. You can start putting your arm over his back, sitting your hips to face the other direction, backing your ass out through the guard. There's a lot of things you can do there, grabbing the head, which is why basically everyone, every big blue belt at your gym will try and grab your head when you go half guard. If you've got a butterfly half guard and the guy grabs your head, he's committing his arms and basically taking his own base away. So what happened with Mansour Banu here was that he grabbed Brent Primus's head from a butterfly half guard, basically put his own elbow on the mat, and Brent Primus just kicked him over. Came up on top. Real misread by Banu in the grappling there. But Banu's elbows and knees were fantastic in this fight. People complain about being a tall guy, or the advantages being a tall guy. They especially get frustrated when tall, long guys use their reach correctly. Mansour Banu does not use his reach correctly. He uses his height to grab people in the double collar tie and smash in knees and throw elbows at them. And it's the most entertaining way to be tall. But the other weird thing was that Brent Primus kept getting top position and then attacking a arm triangle or head and arm choke. Famous examples of this, Weidman versus Gastelum. Jessica Andrade did one standing against Amanda Lima. It's the one where you've got their arm over your shoulder and you're choking them like that. Brent Primus getting close to it, and Banu was scrambling out of it and threatening to come up off things. But Banu would turn away and he does this thing on the ground where he's on the bottom position. He'll turn away from the opponent and come up holding their head like a bad headlock, like a schoolyard headlock. And I've seen this work. Hani Yahya does it sometimes. Did it against Enrique Barzola. Charles Oliveira does it. He did it against Kevin Lee, who's a very good top player. Kevin Lee threw it past his guard. Charles Oliveira kept rolling to his knees and grabbed Kevin Lee's head and took him over in like an old school pro wrestling headlock. Ended up on top. But the other one is that you'll see guys occasionally attempting the outside buggy, which is a form of buggy choke, where you grab your own leg. But where you're normally doing that across their back, you're sitting up to the headlock and then you're grabbing the same side leg with the other arm to the buggy. Hard to demonstrate in a podcast, but J-Rod does it occasionally on the B Team's channel. YouTube J-Rod outside buggy. But Mansour Banui was sitting up on the headlock and then trying to push Primus's free arm in between his legs to hit an arm lock or the that weird leg Americana that Felice Herrig got caught with. You see it quite a lot in women's MMA. People get the scarf hold, which is like holding someone down with a headlock. It's a judo thing. And they'll push the hand between their legs and use their hips to Americana people. And he was trying to do that from the bottom, and he kept trying it. It was very weird, and I thought, I might have to steal that. But he is being held down a lot more than he should be off this. So Banu, out of the tournament. And Brent Primus, it moves on to fight Usman Nurmagomedov, which is going to be a hard ask, because the shortcoming of Primus's game is his striking. And if Usman can make him stand, if Usman could stop the takedowns, which I think he probably can, because Primus's takedowns here, a couple of them weren't super. Like he tried to do an outside trip shot like TJ Dillashaw does, where you shoot the takedown, but you're also tripping them with your outside leg. It's a very cool takedown. He did it to John Lineker, but he tried that and he basically fell to his back and then came up on top because Mansour Banui I heard someone describe it as having the parasite. When you get good at guard, you suddenly become okay with not fighting for top position. So if you're in a scramble, it's not like you don't have that urgency to stay off the bottom, because you go in the back of your head. There's always that parasite going like, we'll be okay if we don't waste a load of energy fighting here. And that's a bit like what Banu was in this fight. Whereas I've been told by people who've trained with the Dagestani Wrecking Crew, Eagle Fight Team, whatever they're called, that basically every round is life and death, and they do not concede takedowns ever, which is also partly why they get injured all the time. I will say well done to Brent Primus, because I massively underestimated him in this tournament. I said him and Sidney Outlaw, who were like the remnants of the old Bellator lightweight division, were the dark horses, or the least likely to win. But also, he gets incorrectly remembered because he calf-kicked Michael Chandler into a stoppage. But because people weren't ready for that, it was seen as like a freak injury. Now, if Demetrius Johnson kicks Henry Cejudo in the calf and his leg goes to sleep, people go, damn, great calf kick. Or Anthony Smith does it to Jimmy Crute or whoever. But back then, because Michael Chandler was their golden boy, and we were supposed to pretend that he was the only good fighter in Bellator, it was like, no, freak injury took Michael Chandler out of that fight. Not getting kicked in the fucking calf. And it jarred his knee as well. It was a bad connection. And then in the rematch, he desperately held on to top position. Like, he wasn't doing anything. I think it was a 3-rounder. And he was like, I'm getting top of closed guard and I'm sitting here. Because Bellator Mike Chandler was a very different breed to realizes he's not in the top 10 really and fights exciting Michael Chandler in the UFC. And then the main event of that Bellator card was Bellator Paris. I was really hoping that they were going to announce Francis Ngannou had been signed, because it would have been the perfect occasion to just have him walk out there like Czech Congo in a great suit. Czech Congo always dressed amazingly. I believe he opened a boutique in Paris off his UFC money. But have Francis Ngannou walk out in a shark skin suit or whatever. It'd be like, yes, I'm here to fight in Bellator. Would have been perfect. Then he could lose to Linton Vassell. But I thought at least, at the bare minimum, Cedric Doumbé. But PFL scooped them the day before this event. PFL said that they're getting Cedric Doumbé, which is because they're sort of like an offshoot of the UFC, both on ESPN. Lots of the same people involved. I think they're probably controlled competition, like I accuse Bellator of being a lot. So yeah, no big announcements off this card, which was a real shame. But the main event was Fabian Edwards versus Gegard Mousasi, because Gegard Mousasi's from Europe, and they're like, Netherlands, close enough. And Fabian Edwards, yeah, had a pretty easy time of it. Just outstruck him on the feet. Gegard Mousasi, like, all joking aside, has always had a problem with being a bit slow, plodding, but also with throwing his right hand. When he throws his right hand, he tends to square up and lunge for the guy, which leaves him very open to counters. So he got chinned a couple of times off that. In fact, it was something that I saw in that fight and also in the Johnny Walker fight that I thought was worth talking about. Because Johnny Walker, when he got dinged by Smith in the second round, it was from going jab, step through with the right hand, full-on swing, overcommit. Smith swayed just back from it and then hit him way out of position with the right hand. It's these guys lunging for right hands. And it's like, I'm always preaching about the double jab, but another function of the double jab is that it makes you take 2 steps. Just step into your stance and then step into your stance again. Just take the extra step, bro. You don't need to jab and then run for him. Aside from that, there was a lot of fouling from Mousasi in this fight. He kicked Edwards in the dick almost immediately. When he got on top on the ground, he immediately kneed him in the chin illegally. And Big John was like, I didn't see a foul there. They showed the replay and he said, oh, there wasn't much power on it. And you're watching Gegard Mousasi, he's got his leg back like he's in the 3-point stance. He throws a full power knee. He hits him with the point of the knee in the point of the chin. And Big John's like, not much power on it. No damage done. And you're going, Jesus, if that's how the guy who wrote the rules considers the word damage, which is apparently one of the top criteria in judging fights, no wonder we've been having so much trouble lately. He's not bleeding, bro. Can't have been much damage. But Fabian Edwards' corner were getting irate during the break after this illegal knee. And they start shouting, if he wants to fight fucking dirty, you fight dirty, which is the worst thing to get recorded saying on a fight, because MMA is a bit rinky-dink. Paris probably doesn't care that much. Actually, France is pretty strict with their commission. They don't allow elbows in Muay Thai fights, or they make you wear elbow pads. And MMA's only just become legal there. But in boxing, people have been fined for suggesting that you should foul back, which is one downside of the corners being mic'd. You can't just say, well, butt him back. So never a good idea to get caught doing that. But then Mousasi held his glove on the ground. Edwards took him down and got on his back in the 5th round. And Mousasi just put his 4 fingers straight in the cuff of the glove, held it for about 3 minutes, and the referee was like, stop doing that. And he just didn't. He basically fouled exactly as much as Conor McGregor. If Fabian Edwards had hair, he'd have grabbed it. Mind you, there was a moment in the Banu Primus fight where Banu, he got mounted crucifixed along the fence, and he put his feet up over his head and put his toes into the fence to start pulling himself around. And the ref slapped one of his feet. And each time the ref was taking one of his feet out, Banu was putting his other foot in the cage. The thing about referees is that they can only see a small angle, and their vision is based on movement. So yeah, Fabian Edwards gets a win, has a easier time with Gegard Mousasi than he did with Charlie Ward, which is really strange. I've not been super impressed with Fabian Edwards so far, but I will concede I wasn't very impressed with Leon Edwards for a lot of his career. And then after, I think, the Cerrone fight, I was going, damn, Leon Edwards, he's putting it together really well. And then there was a period where I was trying to tout him as like a really good talent, really well-rounded fighter, and people weren't having it. So if people are doing that with Fabian Edwards now, and I'm shitting on him, and then he becomes champion, fair play to him and them. But I think that sets him up to fight Johnny Bedlam, Johnny Elden Ring, which honestly could be quite a good fight. I do like Johnny Eblen. In fact, between Fabian Edwards and Johnny Eblen, obviously Eblen's got the better wrestling pedigree, but both of them are guys who will do what needs to be done in the moment. Fabian Edwards, happy wrestling. Johnny Eblen, happy striking. Neither of them is going to take the piss or muck about where they shouldn't. If there's an easier path to victory, they'll take that. Or, if there's an easier path in that moment. And that's what MMA should be. If you want to be a really good all-round mixed martial artist, it's about path of least resistance. And that'll change through the fight, depending on where the guy's focus is. Always think about like Frankie Edgar or someone like that, or Demetrius Johnson, or, anyone who boxed into wrestling really well or wrestled into kickboxing, using one skill to get the guy focused on that skill so that mentally he's open for the other ones. Anything else I like from that card? Douglas Lima actually did something against Costello Van Steenis. Not a lot. He had about 2 flurries in the fight. But it's always nice seeing him do something. And he's massive now. He's a middleweight. He's gone up. And he beat Costello Van Steenis, who is Dutch and trains with Mousasi. So according to Bellator rules, we have to call him Mousasi's protege. But yeah, he edged past Van Steenis. I thought Van Steenis, spare 2 moments of this fight, I thought Van Steenis was probably the better fighter. It's just that so little happened. Those 2 moments really won it for Lima. Nothing else on that card I cared about. Anything else on the UFC card I cared about? The co-main was Johnny Walker versus Anthony Smith. And I thought Johnny Walker, we've been laughing at him for a while for just moving away from the thing that made him exciting, just being a meme fighter and a really athletic meme fighter at that. But Kavanagh and Roddy have got him focusing on the jab and the calf kick. And honestly, it's working quite well for him. Like I said, he lunges and throws himself out of position when he wants to throw hard. There's still a bit of craziness in there, back fists when he's caught out of position, which work. So, keep going for it. But, by settling him down a bit, they seem to have made him good enough that he can at least stay in the top 10. I think he's probably going to be bumped into the top 5 off this fight. Anthony Smith, had no answer for the calf kick, which was crazy because he loves the calf kick. And also, he didn't switch stances at any point. I remember from covering him when he was having the John Jones fight, he likes switching stances offensively. I think this is the thing about MMA fighters. Boxing is so focused on keeping yourself safe that the benefits of switching stances probably outweigh, the cost of switching stances probably outweigh the benefits. Whereas MMA fighters are all about offense, so they love having things off both sides to make them weirder. But they definitely can't defend themselves as well on both sides. So they probably reluctant to do it when they're already losing. But man, Smith could not check a kick for love nor money. And then in the second round, he started shouting at Johnny Walker about how Johnny Walker was attacking his family. Probably something to sort of hype himself up. Maybe he just wasn't there mentally or was trying to get more out of himself than he could. Especially because when fighters start to slow down and feel it, it really is hard for them. So, and then they think for a while that they can just get more out of themselves by G'ing themselves up or going harder. Like Corey Sandhagen said, at some point you're going to meet people who do want it as much as you, and then you just have to be better. It's not about how much you want it or the Herculean effort you put in the gym. It's about what you do. But yeah, Smith said, "You're attacking my family," and Johnny Walker was like, "What? No, I'm not." He stopped beating this guy up to be like, "No, I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to hurt your family." He seems like a genuinely good guy, Johnny Walker, but it was very weird, Anthony Smith's behaviour in this fight. Some people said CTE, some people said PTSD from his home invasion. I think probably just trying to G himself up, like Tony Ferguson against Justin Gaethje. Had he managed to get himself back into the fight, we'd go like, "Oh, genius, I need to..." Every masculinity coach would be making up mantras and saying you've got to think about throwing the sand. But it didn't work, so they didn't bother. But yeah, as light heavyweight fights go, not bad. Certainly not what I'd expect if you told me that it was a technical Johnny Walker 3-round decision. I thought it was better than that sounds. Ian Gary was probably the most impressive performance on the card. He knocked out Daniel Rodriguez. Lovely use of feints and body kicks to high kicks. The southpaw double attack, but done as the orthodox fighter versus the southpaw. It really made him look bad. D-Rod's always been a bit limited, but I always felt like there was potential for him to do more. But yeah, Gary just blew the doors off. So good for him. Managed to not immediately quote Conor McGregor on the mic when he was offered it. So that's a step in the right direction. As I'm always saying after these fights, it's just be you, bro. But he seems to be finding his stride, because his first couple in the UFC, I wasn't too impressed. I had been impressed with his last two in Cage Warriors. That's what I'd seen him the first time. And I really liked the colour of his shorts. I remember that. Like, he's got this nice blue, sort of purpley blue with the yellow trim. And they were great. And sadly, he doesn't get to wear them anymore because the UFC doesn't want people looking individual. They don't want it looking like NASCAR out there, but they will put fucking shirtless Bert Kreischer on every alternate ring post. What the fuck is that movie? That's just, Jesus. Someone funded that? You know that viral clip from 12 years ago by the least funny member of the Joe Rogan adjacent comedians? I'm optioning it. I'm crowdfunding the film rights for Gringo Pappy. And I'm also buying the UFC Strike NFT of Anthony Smith telling Johnny Walker that he's attacking his family. Great knockout, Matt Brown versus Court McGee. Court McGee came out, body jabbed him immediately and kept using the jab quite nicely. Took Matt Brown to the fence. Matt Brown's wrestling actually looked pretty good. Had Mark Coleman in his corner. Nice move. But yeah, he just timed him with a beautiful right hand across the top of the jab. Knocked him spark out. I think he did the same thing to Diego Lima. Just timed a really good right hand. He's really good at finding those. Like when he's pressuring people and cutting the cage on them, he'll throw his right hand right straight in front of his right shoulder, where you're normally throwing it to the middle of your body, your center line, because you're lined up with the opponent. But he's throwing it in front of his right shoulder so that the opponent circles into it, which is a really nice move. Like Roy Jones used to do that. So he's really good at finding the right hand. And fair play to him. He knocked him out and didn't do a follow-up shot. Anything else good? Alex Moreno versus Tim Means. Moreno's all about bouncing and then into the jab and the right hand, whether it's a right straight or a big right swing. It's a weird sort of like karate boxy style in the real minimalist sense. But Means was giving him trouble. Means would counter him with the left hand on the open side every time. Because Means was southpaw, Moreno's orthodox. So Moreno would come in, swing the big right hand, Means would throw the left hand across the top, or pull back and throw it across the top. But then if Moreno extended the combination, if he threw a couple of punches after, he'd chin Means clean. So Means was looking for a good clean counter and then not getting out of the way himself. But man, Moreno, good guillotine. Because the first time he went for it, Tim Means went for a takedown, and he grabbed it like Matt Lindland used to do this. He grabbed back of the head and under the chin. So he's just using his hands to like pull the guy's head off, like a chiropractic adjustment. He's pulling his head into his armpit, and Tim Means freaked out to get out of it. And then the second time Tim Means took him down, he just wrapped it all, arm in guillotine, got his hand nice and in the throat, crunched up into it, did a sit-up, and got the finish. Arm in guillotine still seen as pretty much magic, because even for the like super elite arm in guillotiners, sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. 60% of the time it works every time. The fun fight of the night was Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Cody Stamann. Really just great back and forth fight. Douglas Silva de Andrade, really weird striking, because he won't really jab, he won't really like calf kick or anything that much. He really just has to get hit a few times, and then he gets stuck in, because his main attack is the left hook to the liver into the right straight, which of course means that he has to put himself into the firing line every time. There was a guy called Zarate, a Mexican boxer, he was so gangly for his weight class that he used to be able to lead with the left hook to the body. That was like his jab. Douglas Silva de Andrade is not that gangly, so he really has to put himself in harm's way to do it. So sometimes he's getting chinned with left hooks by Cody Stamann, and sometimes he's just blasting Cody Stamann because he's getting there first. It's a real crapshoot. But then there was a really nice one where he did the left hook to the body right straight, and then he bounced back, and then he did a spinning back kick on the spot, because he knew Stamann would come back in trying to get one back, and hit him right in the gut. But Stamann dropped him. Basically, Douglas Silva de Andrade would throw punches and then angle off to his right, which was working really well against Stamann's takedown attempts. But Stamann then cornered him, or put him to the fence, and caught him with the left hook on the way out, herded him into it, which was perfect. This is what I like about Cody Stamann. He always shows some degree of like high-level technical ability. He just can't get the wins together a lot of the time. I mean, he's not lost a lot. He's only got like 6-7 losses, but I think he's very good. But his team said that they're going to appeal it, because in the first round, Douglas Silva de Andrade kneed him in the head from the bottom. And the ref said, that's illegal, stood him up, warned him, and then let them start from the feet. The old Genki Sudo Dwayne Ludwig special. Genki Sudo was beating Dwayne Ludwig. They pulled them apart to check the cut on one of them. And then they put them back in the standing position. And Dwayne Ludwig was like, right, I'm never looking back. And started out striking Genki Sudo and won the round. But, you know, best of luck to you, because the commission, they won't overturn really flagrant shit. It was Chris Curtis was getting slated for appealing the Kelvin Gastelum one the other day. And that was genuinely a clash of heads that changed the fight and wasn't noted as an accidental clash of heads. This one, you know, did change the fight, but a lot of people are just going to look at it and be like, that's being a sore loser, which is a shame. But they don't want to encourage people to start appealing just everything, because that's the whole point of the judges. It's like, they've ruled, it's final, even if they're shit at their jobs. Anything else? Brian Battle knocked out a guy in one punch, which was cool. And Mandy Bone versus Ji-Yeon Kim was one of the weirdest fights I've watched recently. Ji-Yeon Kim kept lighting her up when she threw the right hand on the feet and then would grapple with her. And they cut to her corner audio. One of the few times you got something interesting on the corner audio, because they're shouting, break away, break away, break away. And then one coach says to the other, she's not fucking listening. I don't understand. You're going, oh, wow, I'm really glad they actually did the corner audio. Corner audio is normally just an annoyance, but it was really interesting listening to it this time. But then Ji-Yeon Kim illegally knees her in the head on the ground. Bohm says she can't continue. The referee docks a point like after he's called the fight off, which was really weird. And we got a technical decision. We got a technical split decision. You know, I'm always saying if you bet on a technical decision, you'll make a fortune, because they almost never happen. Technical split decision. Oh! So Mandy Bohm scrapes the technical split decision by winning the Oscar for being kneed in the head. And yeah, that was about it. Wasn't a lot going on elsewhere in combat sports this weekend, aside from Rolando Ramirez knocking over some 16-year-old with pushes and getting some help from the ref. I did put up a video on the YouTube channel called 5 Cool Things in Kai Asakura versus Yuki Motoya. Go give that a look. If you like that format, tell me, and I might do it to other fights that you have watched. I think that'll do us for this week. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk about this. It's pretty bad, the UFC offering this week. It's Angie Hill versus Mackenzie Dern main event. So maybe Zuckerberg saves them by buying out the arena for his crush, Mackenzie Dern. I love that. He has to pretend that she's just like his favourite fighter because of how she fights. It's like, no, she isn't. No one enjoys her fighting style that much. But there's a couple of fun enough fights on there. Diego Ferreira's on there against Michael Johnson. Some stuff to talk about. We've also got a Crush event coming up, and there might be some boxing on, I can't recall. But yeah, we'll have stuff to talk about on the Patreon anyway. And if it's that desperate, I'll just walk you through my current experience with Tears of the Kingdom. So if you want to sign up to the Patreon, support the podcast, get the Tears of the Kingdom scoop from your boy Jack Slack, do that. Become a Patreon boy. If you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing anytime, 5prime.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. Bellator taking their fights off YouTube and charging Canadians a pay-per-view fee for a 7-day pass to events and expecting that to help their business. Bless.